Welcome to Diaspora, the show where we share the remarkable stories of immigrants from the Indian subcontinent. I'm your host, Aditya Mehta. Each week, we sit down with individuals who have made the journey from the subcontinent to North America and explore their experiences, their challenges, their triumphs. We delve into their unique perspectives on adapting to a new culture while staying connected to their roots. Today, we have Joohi Sinha, an entrepreneur and one of the most outdoorsy people I know. Joohi is originally from Ahmedabad in India and now lives in beautiful Vancouver, BC. She's got a tech background, but now with her husband Veer, runs Cam Central, which is a distributor of high-end industrial camera equipment. Fun fact, she's completed the Grand Fondo Whistler not once but twice. And if you don't know what that is, it's this grueling bike race which climbs like 10,000 feet over 75 miles. So we'll hear more about it during the show. I know Joohi from my days in Vancouver when I used to run the new immigrant platform, also called Diaspora, and she helped manage the explorers community and organize different shows, meetups, and outdoor activities. So let's dive into this week's conversation. Joohi, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Aditya. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm excited to be a part of the show.
Awesome. How was the drive coming down here?
The drive is pretty good. I really enjoyed the scenic beauty around the both sides of the road. It was amazing.
You know your podcast is going to do well and your show is going to do well when you have people traveling to come interview right from the first one. So you're from Ahmedabad. You grew up in Ahmedabad.
Yeah.
So for those who don't know, I think Ahmedabad is like the Dallas of India. It's this big, sprawling, fast-growing city. Nobody knows what people do there, but I think there's a lot of businesses. It's well connected. There's a lot going on, a lot of industries, a lot of jobs. And just like Texas, they have a city they compete with within the state as well. So tell us more about your time growing up in Ahmedabad, and you're not originally from there. You're not Gujarati. So let's go into that more, how you ended up in Ahmedabad and what were your years growing up like?
Yeah, so you're right. I'm not originally a Gujarati. My parents are originally from another city called Patna, which is on the northeastern side of the country.
Yep.
My parents were immigrants themselves. My dad moved to Ahmedabad when, even before I think he married my mom. And so I was pretty much in Ahmedabad for most of my life. I did my education, my high school, and then my university, and then my master's, all in Ahmedabad. So I've spent a major part of my life in that city, and I absolutely loved the city. It has so much to offer.
Yep.
In terms of culture, food. It's a growing city. I wouldn't say it matches up to all the big tier 1 cities of the country like Delhi and Mumbai. But it has a lot to offer, and I had spent a really good time there. My schooling days were spent in a convent school in Mount Carmel. That's where I did my my kindergarten all the way up to high school. And after finishing high school, I pursued computer science. So I did my bachelor's in computer science from St. Xavier's College. And soon after bachelor's, so I somehow just stumbled upon the computer science field. I don't know how it happened. I had never planned it. When I was growing up, during my early childhood days, my dream was to be a doctor.
Okay.
But I think I wasn't smart enough, or I didn't get enough good grades. And
it is very competitive in India.
It is. It's intense. So even if you're at 99%, it's not good enough.
Yep.
So yeah, I never had the kind of grades that it required, and so computer science just happened randomly for me. It wasn't planned.
Were you one of like 2 women in the whole class in computer science?
Yeah, pretty much. So we had a batch of 60 students, and I think just like 1/4 of them were girls.
That's still a good ratio.
So but I had a really fun time during my college days at St. Xavier's. It's a really nice college. The campus, I had some good memories with my college friends.
Yeah.
And then I pursued my master's in computer science as well. And soon after finishing my master's degree, I was selected for an internship with a company called Sophos,
Hmm.
and they're a security company, and that's how my journey began in
Right.
the tech security industry.
Yeah, I remember when I met you, you both were in that security kind of industry, right?
Yeah, yeah. So
For those who missed it, both her educational institutions, they're what we call in India convent schools,
yeah,
and they're usually run by Christian missionaries from like back in the day when the British were in India, and they represent some of the best schools. And there's a general perception that if you're from a convent school, you have better English. I don't think that holds as true anymore as before, but just wanted to put that out there. So
yeah,
yeah, so you then started working in the security space, and I guess
yeah.
at some point is when you met Veer, because I remember you both met in India and not here.
That's
Yeah,
correct. So yeah, I started my career as an embedded engineer with that company, and while I joined the company as an intern, my future husband was already working there in the same team as a tech lead, and we just happened to work together for a few projects, and that's how we got to know each other, and eventually got married. So yeah, that's how I met my husband, and uh, the so essentially both Veer and myself, we've been ever since we've met, we have worked together. I'll talk more about what we do now, but yeah,
yeah,
ever since then we've been working together.
yeah. That's one of the talking points my wife and I have all the time is whether to work together or not. Um, I think it's a bad idea, but that's also because of who I am as a person and who she as a person, the compatibility. More on that some other time. So, did you both have this outdoors bug in India, or is that something you developed after coming here?
I wouldn't say I was a very like I liked being outdoors. I liked being fit and doing activities, but the city that I grew up in, Ahmedabad, didn't have as much to offer
Yeah,
as my current city does, which is Vancouver.
yeah,
So Vancouver is a whole another level
of
of
course.
what it has to offer in terms of outdoor activities. So I think what's out there and what can be done, and I was
Yeah,
like, oh, this is perfect. It's like heaven for me.
yeah. I mean,
And
most cities in India, there is no concept of the outdoors.
that
There's
is
no
true.
hiking trails. It's too many
Yeah,
people.
yeah.
You might have some parks and some nearby what we call hill stations. Like from Bombay, you could go to Mathiran or whatever, right? So,
And Ahmedabad was like that. It was completely landlocked,
yep,
hardly any water. So we didn't have much water activities, no hills. It was completely flat.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
So,
can't imagine someone with a kayak going down the Sabarmati
oops,
River,
he would
right?
just hit
Yeah,
the hard rock on the floor.
yeah. Okay, so you had an interest. So was Vancouver a deliberate move, or was it more let's go to Canada, or was it more let's leave India? Which one was it?
It's interesting because it started with let's think outside Ahmedabad.
Okay,
That's how it started. Um, since I was in tech, and like I mentioned, Ahmedabad is a growing city, but it's not as developed. So the tech industry is not highly developed there.
yeah,
So both of us started thinking about what can we do next to grow our careers, grow our business in the tech industry.
yeah.
So we started considering moving to a new city, and we started exploring the options that we had. Obviously, Bangalore and Hyderabad were one of
Sure.
the first options that came to mind. But then we thought, why do we want to limit ourselves to Indian cities? Let's look. Let's just think outside the box.
Sure.
And so we started looking at what other options we had. And at that time, I was also running a startup, also with Veer, my husband. We were both working on a tech product startup at that time,
Hmm.
and we had a few clients who were based out of Vancouver
Okay.
in Canada, and that is how the idea came to our mind to try Vancouver as an option. So yeah, that's how it started, and Vancouver became the default option because that's where our clients were based out of,
Interesting.
and they were the ones who actually recommended us to this to explore the city.
That's interesting because I'm yet to come across someone who followed their clients versus followed family or followed the weather. So that's pretty interesting to me. Okay, so now you decided to go to Canada. Um, how old were you both at that time?
So we must have been in our late 20s when we applied for our permanent residency in
Yeah.
Canada.
So you were the exact sweet spot as per the express entry point system.
Yeah, that's how we planned it.
Yeah.
So we wanted to be here before we hit the
Because
30
then the
mark.
points start going down. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so this was the year 2016 when we started our application process.
Okay.
And for us, it was pretty quick. We had all the necessary, like all the things checked off to have a good score. And then we applied for a permanent residency. And
It was also less competitive back then.
it was,
Yeah.
that is true.
Now
and
you have immigration centers in the mall where people are lining up, right? So it wasn't as competitive back then. And
Yeah.
my process took 3 weeks back then.
Yeah, it was something similar for us. The entire thing took about 3 months. And then it was so quick that we were not prepared to just
Sure.
shut everything off and move to a
Yeah.
completely new country. So we took our time to
Yep.
wrap things up in India. And eventually in summer of 2017, we made the move to Vancouver.
Okay, that's a really good time to come to Vancouver. But I moved in the month of April of 2018, and by the time we found our feet, the summer was over, and I'm kind of bummed out with that because if I had moved in the winter, the weather would only get better, and I would be well settled to take advantage of that summer.
Yeah.
But I think and then of course, then COVID came in, and a couple of summers were wasted with that, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't get my true summer experience in Vancouver until 2021. So I'm glad you got one more than I did. What were your first impressions of Vancouver when you landed?
It's funny because we had researched everything about Vancouver, whatever it has to offer, all the outdoor beauty, the mountains, the oceans. But Vancouver also has some of the less talked about things that are also quite popular within the city. And I'm sure
Such
you
as?
know what I'm talking
Yeah.
about when I say Hastings Street.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So there's certain parts of town which are not exactly where you want to be hanging out.
Yeah, and it's a
Yeah.
very small part of the city, but there's an area in Vancouver where there's a lot of
It's where the controlled drug usage center is. So a lot of people
Right.
hang out there who need those drugs regularly. Do you feel
Right.
it has gotten worse after COVID?
It has spread to a larger area now. So, but like we were talking about first impressions, and immediately after landing, we were at our friend's place who had graciously offered us to stay at his apartment, and his apartment happened to be on Hastings Street.
Oh,
Um, and we liked going to downtown and just walking around downtown. So every time we didn't have a car back then, right? So
yeah.
every time we had to take either the bus or a taxi and go all the way across the street,
Oh yeah. I
the
know what you
Hastings
mean.
Street, and then reach downtown. So the first couple weeks, that was my first impression of Vancouver.
Right.
And as a new immigrant in the city, I was constantly wondering, did I make the right decision
Sure.
moving here?
Yeah.
But then, obviously, everybody knows that's just a very small part of what the city is. It's not
Yeah.
what defines Vancouver. It's
Yeah.
much, much more than that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but the first impression was not great.
Not good. Okay. Fair enough. As you started getting more used to Vancouver, now what is the one thing that stands out?
So the biggest thing about being in Vancouver that is different from what it was being back home in India is the work-life balance.
Yeah.
I just cannot get over the fact that people in India have to work more than 80 hours a week
Yeah.
sometimes. And they're called in on weekends. They
Yeah.
don't get enough time with the family.
Yeah.
And Vancouver is the exact opposite. I mean, even on a Friday, it's 3 p.m. and everybody's just logged off work and they're ready to just hang out, chill
Yeah.
with their friends or go out for a during summers, just hang out on the beach. So that is the biggest thing I feel is what makes Vancouver so awesome.
Yeah. On that note, let's take a short break and we'll be back in no time. And we're back. So, going back to life in Vancouver, I hear this a lot that people say it's a very cliquey city and that people are not very open and people don't, they're not friendly. Did you ever feel that in your first few weeks and months?
Not really. I don't believe I ever had the experience where I'm trying to approach somebody and they've resisted
Yeah.
introducing themselves or making friends.
Yeah.
No, I think we've been lucky that way. We have some really good relations, really good connections in Vancouver. We've been there for quite some time now. So Vancouver feels like home away from home for us.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
I've never felt that issue ever.
Yeah, we were told that a lot by people. And what we realized very early on is that, we live in Bombay. If someone moves to Bombay, am I reaching out to those people and saying, hey, new immigrant, let me help you? Nobody does that.
Yeah.
So as the new
absolutely.
immigrant, the onus is on you to reach out to people,
Mhm.
maybe show value in knowing you. And I've found people to be more than helpful with that. So work-wise, what were you doing in your early days in Vancouver? I guess you brought your business with you. Or did you look for jobs immediately or after a bit, or how did that progress?
So I mentioned that back in India, I was running my own startup around the time when I decided to move to Canada. And we decided that it would be best to just wrap up the business back there and then move and have a fresh start.
Okay.
So both of us, my husband and myself, we just wrapped everything up and decided to move, and we had no idea what we were going to do for work here.
Okay.
But we were pretty certain that we would find something
Sure.
because coming from a tech industry, the skills are very very interchangeable.
Transferable,
So
yeah.
it's not like we have to go for a fresh start and resume studies or anything like that. So we moved here. Obviously, we had made a good, try to have a few connections,
Sure.
started looking for which companies we want to target work-wise. And we came with that foundation, and I started for looking for jobs soon after landing. And then I remember exactly in 2 weeks of moving to a new city, I had a job in the tech field, which was very similar to the profile I had back in India.
That's pretty impressive because most people face the do you have Canada experience wall,
That's
right?
right.
Even in transferable positions.
Mhm.
And I'm like, well, it's without the experience, how do I get a job? And without the job, how do I get the experience,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Uh,
Like chicken and egg.
for me, when I came there, I was still running my business in India, and I suddenly felt like the world is wide open. I can do anything I want. That wasn't exactly good for our plans, and I'll maybe go into that some other time. But my wife had a similar experience, although she comes from a very niche background as far as Vancouver is concerned. She's from a pharmaceutical background. There's no real pharma jobs there. I think there was one job in the whole city that fit her like exact description as she got that job. So we got lucky, and it, of course, testament to her abilities. That but it was a very small pool to look for.
Yeah.
When you joined that company, what struck you out first about the difference in work culture, the style of working? I know you mentioned the work-life balance, but anything else that was different?
Yeah, I talked about work-life balance, and that company actually was pretty big on having work-life balance. I remember my manager was a big time skier, and during the winter months, he would log off every day at 2 p.m. If it was snowing on the mountain, he was like, okay, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
You guys can leave if you want. You can stay if you want. I'm going to ski.
Yeah.
So, which was very unusual for me coming from Ahmedabad, where it's normal to work up until 8 p.m., 9 p.m.
Sure.
at night. and that really struck out. And um,
You almost feel guilty leaving at 2 o'clock, right? Yeah.
right, it's not normal.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was, and the company that I joined was a relatively smaller group of people. So I was just amazed by how everybody is so connected to each other.
Yeah.
They were not just work colleagues; they were almost like they were friends. They knew each
Sure.
other, everything about each other's life, and yeah, I mean, it was just nice. It was a great company, and they were doing some excellent work.
Yeah.
So it was a great experience for me.
I think some people find that very disconcerting, the slower pace, especially coming from a place like Bombay, like I do.
Yeah,
Um, I always say Vancouver has the personality of a yoga instructor, and it's just laid back and focuses on wellness and sustainability and all of that. Um, so so what I'm learning now is that you weren't always expert snowboarders and skiers and whatnot. That was all after you moved here.
of course. I mean, where would I snow in Ahmedabad on the
Sure.
sand dunes?
Mount Abu, maybe. So what was your first experience with, like, just outdoor activities, not necessarily the ones that require all the equipment and training like skiing, but even the simple stuff like going for a hike or just being by
Yeah.
the water. I
Yeah.
guess from Ahmedabad, water is a bigger deal than for me than it is in Bombay because we're used to it.
Absolutely.
So what was that very first thing where you just both looked at each other and said like, yeah, we're in the right place?
I think it was volleyball, beach volleyball.
Okay.
We used to, in the very initial days after moving to Vancouver, we used to to hang out at the beaches because, like you said,
Yeah.
it's a unique thing. Like
Yeah.
it's having such a large water body, so close to your city. So we used to like hanging out at the beach, and then we saw a group of people playing beach volleyball, and we immediately got interested, and then we joined the group, and it was actually. A group of friends that had been playing for a very long time, but they welcomed us into the group. And in fact, some of them were so nice. They used to come and pick us up from home and even drop us off.
Yeah.
And we used to meet weekly, I think every Tuesdays. And that was a routine that we had in the very initial weeks after moving here.
And I think you paid it forward because during COVID, you were organizing volleyball for everybody
That's
else.
right. Yeah.
We had events capped at 10 people, public gatherings, I remember. And you used to do those. And I think you did several, like 10 or 12 of those.
It was a regular event. Like we used to meet every week, I think,
Yeah.
for a very long time.
You collected a lot of positive karma, I think, because there were so many people who either were very new or just were single and they couldn't go anywhere. They couldn't talk to anyone. They didn't know what was going on. They were brand new. And that's the reason I started Diaspora in the first place. But I do think you also contributed to like the wellness of those people in a big way. So I also remember your cherry blossom bike ride.
Yeah.
Do you still do that at all? Even just by yourself?
Yeah, we do that every year. We like biking a lot.
Yeah.
So we organized a few bike rides through
Yep.
the Diaspora group, and it was a hit. I mean,
Oh, it was a huge
even
hit.
after so many years, I meet people and who had attended that bike event several years ago,
Yeah.
and they come up to me and say, "I know you. You were from the Cherry Blossom
Yeah.
bike ride." I was like,
Um,
"Oh, you were there."
So for more context, they had a route designed that would take you from around Vancouver and all the places that had the prettiest cherry blossoms in
Yeah.
spring. And we would have a meeting spot, and there's a bike rental right next door, and you could either bring your own or rent a bike, and then they would take you all the way around for a couple of hours, I think, 2 to 3 hours
Yeah.
worth of biking, and
Yeah.
you see all these amazing cherry blossoms. So
And it was not an intense activity or anything. It was just a very chill bike ride across the Stanley Park where we had all these beautiful cherry blossoms.
Yeah.
And then we used to stop at certain spots and click pictures.
yeah.
And then we had a social at the end.
Which was the hardest sport for you to pick up that you now do or eventually just gave up on?
The hardest sport, it's again a funny story. I was never a skier. I started skiing in, I think, 2018, the very next winter after we moved here.
Yeah.
We were like very keen on doing snow activities because it felt like
Yeah.
we were missing out on a lot if we are not doing that.
Yeah.
So
The
I
party moves to the mountains in the winter always.
So it's funny because I learned skiing almost immediately, but I've been trying to learn ice skating for so many years now, but I'm still very, very bad at it. So
Okay.
I don't know how, but I cannot ice skate.
I'm exactly the opposite. I picked up ice skating pretty quickly, but skiing was a lot harder.
And now my kid, who is 3.5, is skates better than I do,
Didn't he
which
get
is
like a pair of skis as your like a baby shower gift or something for?
he
Because
actually got
he's
his first pair of skis even like as soon as he turned 1,
yeah.
and he started skiing at 1.5.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. And that's why I say to everyone that you guys are really living that life and making the most of being there. It's one thing to see the mountains and appreciate them from downtown, from your condo, but it's one thing to just be out there. There's a funny story where my wife and I were in Mexico and we were talking about, how we don't get as much outdoor stuff done. And while my wife is recording, the restaurant, I'm saying loudly, well, you have to be like Veer and Joohi to do that. And she posted it online. She didn't think about, what I was saying. And then Veer messaged me saying, what do you do? Why are you guys talking about us in Mexico?
I remember
And, like,
that.
what did we do? And then I had to explain the situation to him. So now you're in Vancouver. You're starting to do all these outdoor activities. What got you into the Grand Fondo Whistler? Like that's something pretty intense, even for someone who's been there their whole life.
Yeah. So I did my first Grand Fondo in 2018. That was the very next year after I moved here. And the Grand Fondo Whistler is a bike race, a road cycling race that happens every year. It starts from Stanley Park in Vancouver and goes all the way up to Whistler, which is a very beautiful mountain in northern part of British Columbia. And
So reverse context. If you're an Indian listener and you don't know what Whistler is, it's the Shimla of the US or of Canada.
yeah, it's beautiful. It's located at the base of two mountains. The route that goes from Vancouver to Whistler is the Sea to Sky Highway, which is
Yeah.
one of the most
Amazing,
scenic
yeah.
drives. And getting to bike on that route where you can just enjoy the beauty, I think that's what got me interested into the race.
Yeah.
Before I did the Grand Fondo, I wasn't a biker at all. I think the maximum biking I'd ever done was about 20 kilometers, 20, 30 kilometers at
Mhm.
max. And this particular race is 125 kilometers and with a insane elevation gain.
Yeah.
And I wasn't prepared. I just signed up on a whim because
Yeah.
I wanted to do it. It just felt like it's an amazing thing to do, and I just signed up. And of course, my husband was the motivator factor for me there too. He was the one who actually signed up first,
Yeah.
and he said, "Why don't you join me?" And I was like, "Okay, I can do that. I can manage that." And so we both decided to just sign up on a whim, and we started our bike race at, I don't know what time they start, like early morning, 5 a.m.
So you did this in one shot. There's no breaks. Like there's no. It's
Oh.
not like an overnight break. There's.
No, it's done like it's an entire day thing. It
Wow.
takes you about 5 to 6 hours as amateurs,
Wow.
amateur bikers.
I've
but
taken that long to get to Whistler by car sometimes when there's traffic.
yeah, that I can believe that. So that's the first time we did, and we both finished the race, and it was an amazing feeling just crossing the
course.
finish line. And there's people standing on both sides cheering for you, and I felt like, wow, this is amazing. And then immediately after finishing that race, I decided I'm going to come back and do this again next year. So I signed up the very next day for 2019 race, and
Okay.
but this time they actually have two versions of the race. One is a simple one that goes from Vancouver to Whistler, which is pretty intense. But there's another version, which is the more greater intense version, I would say, is where you start from the start line at Stanley Park, and then you have to climb up Cypress Mountain,
Oh.
and which is about 15 kilometers of climbing
Yeah. Because
Um,
why not? Right. Just
on your bike.
more pain. Yeah.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
yeah. So So I did that version of the race the next year, where I climbed up the mountain, got back down, and then went to Whistler. So that adds about 30 kilometers.
Sure.
And
So then why not the third time and make it a hat trick?
so I'm doing it again this year.
Okay.
This is going to be my hat trick year. So yeah, 2019, I did the race, and then of course we all know that for the next 2 years,
Sure.
there were no
There's nothing
no
going on.
events happening. So 2021, up until 2021, the Grand Fondo was not being conducted in Vancouver, and then the same year I had a baby, so I took a break for a few years, and now this is the year when I'm going back and doing it again. So this is going to be my third year.
Speaking of baby, I've heard rumors that you did the Grouse grind, which is the toughest hike in Vancouver. It climbs 800 meters in like 3 kilometers while you were 9 months pregnant. And part two, after doing it, you didn't enjoy it that much. You went for another hike just for fun. Is that true?
It's not 100% true because I did it when I was 8 months pregnant, not 9 months pregnant.
That is so much easier. As a guy who's obviously never been pregnant, that makes total sense. Okay, 8 months pregnant.
But I have been doing Grouse grind very regularly.
Yeah.
Living in Vancouver, I think doing the Grouse grind is the biggest flex that anybody can say that,
Yeah.
I can do it in under an
30
hour.
minutes. Yeah.
So that's the biggest flex anybody has in Vancouver.
The first time I did it, this grandma overtook me, and then she took the gondola down and overtook me again.
Oh my
before
God.
I reached the top. So she did it twice.
I know, and people try to set a record on the number of times they can do the Grouse grind in a day. So I think the record is 14 times or
Oh, wow.
something.
That's
So
crazy.
I tried
There's
to
fit and there's Vancouver fit. Like the average level of activeness or activeness, I guess, of people is much higher. And that I think that was the healthiest I've ever been is when I was living in Vancouver. You walk around downtown, you go for all this outdoor stuff.
Yeah.
Did you get your friends to take part in all these sports, or you found people there and they became your friends? Which one came first?
I think we found the kind of people who introduced us to a lot of these things.
Sure.
We did our first hike after coming to Vancouver, which was like in the same summer that we moved here. And that was the Squamish Chief hike, which
Oh,
is in
wow.
Squamish.
Yeah, that's not an easy one.
Yeah, it's a okay hike. But yeah, our friends offered us to give us a ride, and we did the hike together with them. And it was so beautiful. I mean, when I got to the top and I looked
Yeah.
at the view of the Squamish city and the ocean there, it was so beautiful. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh wow, I'm at the right place.
Oh yeah. So my Vancouver moment like this was, we reached our hotel after the airport. We landed, and I opened my curtains, and right there was the North Shore Mountains with snow on them. This was April,
Okay.
and I was like, yeah, I'm in the right place.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I've done everything there is to do out there, but I've done a fair bit, and I'm definitely a better person for it. Let's pause here, and then when we come back, we'll talk about your newish business, and then go from there.
And we're rolling.
So welcome back. We're talking to Joohi Sinha. She's an entrepreneur. She's a resident outdoorsy person in Vancouver, and we were talking about her journey from India to Vancouver. So we talked about how you got here. We talked about the love for outdoors. At one point, did you go from the job that you got right away to deciding to do a business? And was there anything in between those two steps?
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of things going on in between. So I mentioned earlier that I had my business back in India. It was a
Yeah.
tech startup that me and my team built from scratch, and we were very proud of it because it had gained a lot of traction with the local customers,
Sure.
and we had investment coming in from angel investors. So we were doing pretty good, and like we were very excited about building something up from scratch, and that's the kind of mindset we brought with us when we came to Canada too. And initially, we didn't have anything planned out. So the first option that we had was to get a job and get ourselves established and
Yeah.
on our feet before we start thinking of taking any entrepreneurial
Yeah.
ventures.
And I'm glad it was not one of those survival jobs that people take in. The term survival job is
Yeah.
you
yeah.
come in, you go work in the Amazon warehouse or wherever you can just because,
Yeah.
you don't know what's going on and you don't
No,
you don't know where to
absolutely.
actually go work. So I'm glad you got exactly what you.
Yeah.
And was
Yeah.
that deliberate? Like, did you decide I'm not going to do those jobs no matter what and wait for the right
It was
opportunity?
deliberate, and it was also like a very easy transition as well, because I immediately got the first job after moving here, and then I switched companies too, and then I was working as a senior embedded engineer with one of the biggest tech companies in Vancouver. So it happened fairly easily for us, and then the transition happened during COVID.
Mhm.
So that was probably the factor that kind of pushed us to take the step and start the entrepreneurial journey in Canada. COVID happened, and then everybody was working from home. My job was fairly, less hectic and less stressful at that point. I was
Yeah.
working from home. I had a lot of free time where I could start thinking about other entrepreneurial ideas,
Yeah.
and that's how it kicked in. And actually, Veer already had his company established as soon as we moved here. So
Yeah.
he had set up his incorporated company, and he was already doing consultation work. And so after COVID happened and work from home was a big thing, I decided I would join him in the business, and we would both spend our time working on building the business as well.
And that wasn't Camp Central, what you're doing right now. That was something different.
No, that was in the cybersecurity domain. So we were doing cybersecurity consultation at that time,
Yeah.
and our company was incorporated here, and we were consulting SMEs for their internal cybersecurity and doing audits and stuff like that. And so Camp Central happened as an obvious next step for us. So we were already doing consultation work, and we were kind of in the security domain. Both of us were network security engineers, embedded engineers, and doing security consultation. And then we happened to come across this opportunity, which is Camp Central, which was a security equipment company.
Hmm.
And so sometime last year, about a year ago, we acquired this business as a part of addition to our existing security portfolio.
Yeah.
And now both Veer and I are co-owners of the company.
It's not very common for someone to come in as a new immigrant, a newish immigrant, and within the first few years, not only establish themselves so well in just life there, but to go to the point of acquiring a business. So that's pretty commendable. I didn't even know about it until our common friend Dhaval told us that, oh, they moved to the North Shore. And I'm like, yeah, obviously it was a matter of time before they moved to the North Shore to be closer to the mountains. So like, no, he moved so that, they can run this business that they acquired. So it's within that security domain, but it's hardware.
Yeah.
And these are not your Ring cameras outside your house. These are like big, expensive ones that I guess like a commercial building would use or like a traffic light would use, something like that.
Yeah, it is a strictly commercial grade camera. So Camp Central supplies and provides services around video surveillance cameras.
Okay.
This company has been around since ages. Like, I think it's almost 4 decades old now. And it is well established. It has great relations with a lot of different entities in Vancouver, in
Yeah.
Canada. And the founder of the company had decided to retire, and that's
Yeah.
where we stepped in and thought that this would be a very good addition to our existing portfolio. And we bought the business and we took over, and we've been running it full time since. And it has been a journey. You're right; it's not easy, or it's not even a normal thing for. It's not an easy thing for somebody to accomplish.
Yeah.
From what I've understood, is that acquiring a business, there are 100 different things that can go wrong
Yeah.
that would end up the business not getting sold at all.
Right.
But it worked out for us, and we pursued it. Like we spent a lot of time and resources into pursuing it, and in the end, it worked out for us, and we're very grateful for it.
Yeah, I see this mega trend where there are people, especially from the baby boomer generation, who are retiring. They have successful, maybe boring businesses, and they want to get, they want the business to continue, but they don't want to handle it anymore. So I think it's quite impressive that you capitalize on that trend, which a lot of people are still kind of waking up to. I also think it would have been harder, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because you're in a new country, and I mean, 5 years is still kind of new, right? Like you don't know the in and out of that country. Like even now, you may or may not know all the names of the hockey players, right? Like so, there's a point which is like true assimilation, and 5 years is too less for that. That was my point. So you're learning new country, you're learning a new industry because cybersecurity, you don't know cameras that well.
Yeah.
And now you're learning how to do business in this country, which is not the same as working in a job in this country. And it's I've done business in India. It's so different from doing a business here. Very different set of challenges. So you pulled off like a triple whammy of new business, new industry, and new country. And how has that been so far? Was it harder than you thought, or was it easier than you thought?
To be honest, I wouldn't say it was easy. It was in every way a very hard thing to do. I would say I've done like two things in my life that I know are the like pretty hard things that I've done. One of them was having a baby, and the second one was acquiring and running a business.
Right.
So, yeah, it was hard, but I think we were pretty committed to doing it. And like I mentioned, like I work with Veer, my husband, and it really helps that both of us have complementary skill sets, and that makes us an excellent team, and we work really well together. And I think that has been the biggest factor that's made us successful in achieving this result that we have.
Were there any like low points that made you, and not just in the business, in general, that made you question your move? I've been in this part of the world for 7 years in my second innings. I've had very few some moments like that. So were there any moments where you were like, man, I just want to go back?
No, not really. I never had that thought that I would want to go back home because of something that happened. I mean, there have been highs in my journey, there have been lows, but I think that's just life. It's normal. Everybody goes through that highs and lows in life.
Yeah.
It's not any additional highs or lows that I've experienced because I was an immigrant.
Sure.
So, yeah, obviously, I mean, there were a lot of challenges. We decided to take a path that was a bit out of the normal. We decided to set up a business here after immigrating to a new country, and obviously, it comes with its challenges. But I don't think that I ever had the thought that I would want to just go back.
If everything works out well, would you ever move back to India? And if so, under what conditions would you move back?
So I have thought about this a lot. And after these many years in Vancouver, I think it'll be very hard for me to move back to India at this point.
Yeah.
I wish that I could have my family closer to me. And that's
Sure.
the only thing that, that's the only thing, and that's probably the only reason that I would want to go back to India, is that if something happens to my family,
Yeah.
then I would want to stay closer to them.
Do they visit you often, or do you get to go back often?
Yeah, they do, and we visit them as well. But as you know, it's a 24-hour
It's a bit of a hike.
journey.
Yeah.
More than 24 hours, right?
Yeah.
Getting to India, it's not easy. I wish there was some like a new technological advancement, something that would just teleport me and I'm in India.
Yeah.
I'm just waiting for that day.
The tickets still won't be any cheaper. I can promise you that. The tickets will still be crazy expensive.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm ready to pay the price difference, even if it gets me there faster.
That
But,
makes sense.
Yeah.
Are there any people or anything you did in particular that you credit the most for this successful move to Canada? Is it or a personality trait maybe that this is these people and these reasons are why we were able to pull it off, and we have this upward trajectory.
I think it's true for every person who has ever left their country,
Yeah,
is the personality trait of taking risks. Anybody who's ever stepped foot outside of their country and
Yep.
moved to and tried to integrate into a new country is a risk taker.
yeah,
That's what every immigrant is. And I think that's what we were. And that's the number one reason why we could successfully integrate into a new country and establish ourselves.
I think that's very well said. What advice would you give someone who's moving maybe around this time, apart from take risks? What else would you say?
I would say do your research and be very sure of why you want to move to a new country. A lot of people just think that they'll have a better lifestyle,
Yeah,
but they are sacrificing a lot of things that they already have to come
Yeah.
and pursue a lifestyle that they just assume that they're going to get.
Yeah.
But it's not always true. So the biggest tip that I would want to give is just do your research, know what you're doing,
what you're
what
getting
the
into.
journey entails,
yeah,
and then if you're 100% sure, only then take that step.
yeah. No, that's I had lived in this part of the world before, so for me it was such an easy decision, and I think it also made a lot of things easy for me. Like I already knew how to drive in this part of the world, right? And such simple things also can become huge roadblocks into to how quickly you can assimilate and succeed.
Yeah.
Let's go into our weekly segment from here on. So what we do is we ask the guests a couple of funny, light-hearted questions, and we have a rolling series of questions that we ask. So why don't we spin the wheel and see what we land on for today's episode? The first one is called commercial break. So
Okay.
most Indian people tend to be nostalgic about the TV ads from India, especially the ones from the 90s, the
Yeah.
100s. It's just like the golden age of TV ads. So I asked my guest what their favorite commercial break is from like Indian radio or Indian TV.
There's so many good ones, and like you said, yeah, it just creates that nostalgia when I
Yeah.
think about those ads that I've seen in my childhood. But there's one that came to my mind as soon as you mentioned this, was the ad with that little boy, the Dhara oil ad,
Yeah.
where he says, "Jalebi."
Oh, he's running away from home.
Yeah, and he's sitting at a railway station, and
Yeah.
then he realizes, oh, there's jalebi at home, and then he just runs back to eat those
And
jalebis.
the jalebi is being cooked in the Dhara cooking
Dhara oil.
And that
And
was,
it was
Yeah.
such a cute ad. I love it.
yeah, that's a great one. We will include a link to that in the show notes if you want to check it out. I think we have time for maybe one more of the weekly segment. So let's spin that wheel again. This one is called Antakshari. So, for those of you listening at home, Antakshari is a game that you play in our part of the world where someone sings a song and then the next person has to sing a song that starts with the last letter of the song. So, it's like a chain of songs, and then the one who can't think of one is, I guess, loses. We're not going to do any singing on the show, but just generally, are there any songs that stand out for you, or any even movies, but mainly a favorite song that you could listen to on repeat?
So I used to love this song, and I eventually it kind of got at the back of the list of my favorite songs. But now I recently reconnected with it. I was listening to Chaiya Chaiya recently, and it's from one of
From-
my favorite albums
From-
by A.R. Rahman,
Dil Se.
from the movie Dil Se.
Yeah.
And I mean, every song in that album is just exceptional, but this one stands out because of the overall energy by everybody, by not just the actors, but also the music and the dancers, the background dancers, the choreography,
And the
everything.
fact that they're doing Bollywood dance on the roof of a train, a
On
moving
a
train.
moving train.
Yeah.
Which is like just going across a cliff, and
Yeah.
it's insane.
I think it was also in a soundtrack of a Hollywood movie. I don't remember which one, but Well, that brings us to the end of today's show. Thank you for listening to Diaspora. We hope you enjoyed hearing Joohi's amazing story. Remember to check out our show notes for links and more information about the topics that we discussed today. You can find Diaspora on all major podcast platforms, and if also on YouTube. We have a channel there. If you like this episode, consider following us on Instagram or leaving us a 5-star review. Diaspora is part of the Staying Power network of shows and podcasts, all of which are dedicated to sharing stories and perspectives meant to inspire listeners to build better lives of meaning, of connection, of value. You can find the Staying Power network of shows wherever you find your podcasts. So we'll be back next week with another interesting story from the South Asian diaspora. Until then, take care and stay curious. And Joohi, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.